I'm Seamless, and it doesn't actually matter what day it is. It hasn't mattered in kind of a while, but what I'm doing right now is I'm doing the making of the Killer Instinct remix that I did. This is a remix of The Way You Move from the original 1994 Killer Cuts album. If you have never heard it, I recommend that you do, because one of the things I want to address is actually in the very beginning of this, I'm going to talk about how what frame of mind I was in when I made this track and what decisions I made to actually do it. And one of the big things about it is that the chord progression is super duper, like, not only is it just like really simple, but it's also very regular in terms of like stuff that I've done. And that's purely coincidental, because if you listen to the original track, my arrangement is more or less identical. It's basically just an update of it's also pretty much the same style. They're both housey tracks, and I basically just did an updated version of it with my style. And that's something else, is that when I asked Mick Gordon, who approached me about doing this remix, what kind of remix that he wanted, because I didn't know like what the album was going to be about, like how, if there are going to be other remixers, if there's a theme they were trying to go for. So like I wanted to know, like, well, do you care if I do like the hardest remix, or do you want something more regular? And then he says, just make it a seamless track, make it the most seamless track possible. And I thought about that, and I said, okay, I have a plan. Because this is a remix of, like, this remix is actually on the official soundtrack. It's actually on the soundtrack. It's the only remix, by the way. And this means that a whole hell of a lot of people who have never heard me at all are going to hear this and hear me for the first time. And so this is why I incorporated a lot of very familiar sounds, very familiar styling, and basically kept it to the same chord progression and kept it the same style, because this is a very, very seamless track. That was basically what the point was. That was basically the reason for that. Lots of people picked up on that when they listened to it. And that was cool. Yeah. I don't actually think I literally use the sometime chords, but I mean, there's only so many ways you can make a supersaw. There's Mr. Cush in the chat. One of these days I'll have the chat up on the screen somehow. People watching this on YouTube probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm streaming this on Twitch, and there's going to be more overlay stuff. Like right now, my camera is, where it is, and that's cool. But I'm not very good at kind of remembering where it is, and like I want to put the chat up, have all different things on the screen. But then I keep doing stuff like behind it. Like I'll be like, oh, move it over here. Like, oh, I'll do things behind this thing, and you can't really see what I'm doing because it's a camera in the way. So I'm gonna like get dry erase marker and just draw on my monitor where the overlays are, so that I don't have to do stuff behind it. It'll be funny. So let's actually get to it. Now, if you want to hear what the song sounds like, if you haven't yet, I'm not actually really gonna play parts of it. I'm gonna play individual elements of it, but if you want to hear the whole thing, go listen to the original. It'll be linked in the description. And that's because while this is my track, I don't actually own the publishing, which means that if I get hit for content ID, I don't get monetization. I want to avoid that. So, very first thing, this guy. This is the Leviathan Impact Glass sample from Leviathan. There's a lot of Leviathan. Anything that says LEV is from Black Octopus's Leviathan sample pack. It's very large. It's very big. Has lots of handy stuff. I also made some things for it. This is what it sounds like originally. I think I might have. Nope, I haven't done anything to it. That's just what it sounds like. Did I pitch it up or anything? Nope, that's just the original. And then I reversed it, and it hit the go button, and then all these things happened to appear. Now, also, if you listen to the original version of this song, this intro is more or less just an updated version of the intro. It's pretty much the same thing. I made a whole bunch of really 80s sounding things, at least to me. This is a Harmer. Now what this guy's doing is it's got this volume envelope going on. There's release and attack and stuff, which is actually kind of unlike a lot of things I make, but this is a very specific purpose for this. There's a filter going on, and I have an LFO on the bandpass filter set to global mode, which means that it's going to continue to run regardless of whether or not I play a note. So it'll keep going up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's a bandpass filter, and that's just what it sounds like. It's also keyboard tracked, which means that it'll change its position based on note value. This means also that it's going to be actually a different filter position for the fact that I'm playing a chord. I had the harmonizer engaged, and I believe I had the harmonizer after the filter. Yep, which means that the harmonizer in Harmor, the way that it works is that it copies harmonics and pastes it above it to give it the impression that you're playing a harmonized element. And so putting it after the filter means that it'll copy the harmonic content as is being filtered, and it gives it pretty much a similar profile, as opposed to being before the filter, where it'll copy the harmonic content of the unfiltered harmonics, and then it'll be filtered, and it'll still kind of sound the same because of the filter. It's something I do kind of a lot when I'm messing around with filters inside Harmor. This guy, just straight up chords, I have a phaser on freak mode, and the point of using freak mode is that I have a phaser mask. All right. Actually, this track was when I discovered that I can do that I could do FM on Harmor by engaging the phaser and frequency mode and then using this shape here, the waveform line type. And I experimented a lot with this. And one of the things that I use frequency mode for the phaser is to create pitch uncertainty. Because when you're creating a supersaw, pitch uncertainty is what you want. You don't want too much, but you don't want too little. That's what you get when you do that kind of thing. And the layer B is just straight up a saw. So it actually, there's reinforcement of solidness. I had the phaser mask on pretty hard, which means that really only the higher frequencies are having that ridiculous shape applied to it. That's what it would sound like if it wasn't. I'm doing a lot of sound design stuff, and I didn't really want to do that for this video, but it is still very interesting. I got lots of impacts. I do reverse versions of this. Pretty great. More impacts. There's so many impacts. Shut up, phone. And like, this is something I like Leviathan for a lot, is that there's just a huge amount of impacts, and it's pretty handy when you work with that. Then this bass sample comes in. Not a sample, it's a synth. That's actually not from the original track, that little bit right there. I was getting a little bit ambitious about how I was going to change it around, but I decided to actually stick with the original pretty closely, because honestly, like, the way that I do... Sounds like the sound on Porter Robinson's new track, Polygon Dust. I have not heard that. I should listen to it. When I do remixes, I talked about this when I was doing the Virtual Riot track, but when I do remixes, I very much want it to be incredibly related to the original content. Because my idea of what a remix is usually just a track in either a different genre or like a cover almost. And this is kind of what this is. This is like a cover of the original song. I know that covers actually have a very different meaning, but this is kind of how I go about it. Because I feel like a big thing about how remixes are done these days is that people just take the vocals and they go and they make a completely original track and then put the vocals on it. And they constitute that as being a remix. I'm not saying it's not a remix, because it is. It's just not a kind of remix that I like to do. And this is the kind of remix that I like to do, where it's very familiar. It's familiar territory. People who listen and like the old track can listen to this track and be like, yes, this is the old track, and get into it. And not have to try to get into it. So lots of still going on and building, and then this sample happens.
It's the way you move.
This is ripped straight out of the original song. Now, there's a thing you can do with songs where you phase cancel left and right. Usually when there's vocals involved, this will mean that you isolate the vocals, kind of. You essentially isolate anything that's in the center channel, and a lot of things usually means like just bass or just something else or whatever, but usually you can EQ out all the other elements to get just the sample that you want. Fortunately, this happened in the beginning of the track, of the original track, so it's pretty easy to isolate and grab.
It's the way you move.
That sample is pretty much the only sample from the original track that I actually used. Unfortunately, there were not stems for the older track. Remember, this track was in 1994. So while there are master stems, according to Mr. Gordon, they were on a tape archive somewhere in a warehouse that no one knew about. So I was stuck pretty much just having the master and just making everything else myself. Also, he got a very talented singer to just do the vocals again. This is what this part is. And so that was a lot of fun. So still building up, and then here actually is the beginning, the first time we hear the actual drums. Okay, so here's the first time that we hear my voice, because my voice is actually in this track.
Killer groove.
There it is.
Killer groove. Killer groove. Killer groove.
That's the layer. I do a lot of that layering with the voice a lot of times. I'll cover more about how I got my voice to sound like that in the sound design portion of this video, because my voice obviously doesn't just sound like that. My voice was replacing the original male voice in the original track. I basically said the same line and put it around in the same, more or less the same order, and put effects on it, and then replaced also with the female vocal. It's pretty straightforward, honestly. Like, this is what I like about remixes, is that, like, especially for the kind of remixes that I do, what's going to happen is pretty well laid out. Like, the same thing with the Virtual Riot remix. I had a lot to work with already, and the arrangement was more or less the same as his original track, and as far as drops go. So, like, it wasn't that difficult for me to kind of be on there. And here's me being lazy. This is the UFX snare build. This is really just me being lazy. UFX is Ultimate Effects. It's the Sonic Academy like sample library stuff. They threw me a bunch because I did some tutorials for them. Got some crashes. Ooh, and the Rise. That's this guy. This guy. I think some of these volumes too. That's definitely, it's obviously. That is an FM riser, and I'll talk about how to make that in the sound design portion of these, the three-parter that I'm doing here. This first part being arrangement and elements, where I'm just talking about what the parts are identifiably, and then the next part is going to be sound design, and the next part after that's going to be mixing and mastering. This is how I do making ofs, if you're new to this. That kind of riser is pretty common for the sort of stuff that I do. Lots of just hits and builds and sounds, and the chords even out. So, you know, I do the progression in the beginning, and then I just kind of stay tonic, which I think is E, yeah. And then the hit happens, and then we get that last bit of the rise, and then the drop begins. And I'm still not gonna play it. I know you want me to play it, but I'm not gonna, because I don't want to get content I need. Yeah. What the hell? So the first thing that happens is we get this big old hit going on right there. This is not the sometime chord. Although I believe I actually did something pretty similar. Yeah, this isn't the sometime chord, but I did kind of still make it like it was. This harmonic unison window, harmonic unison pitch window that I do is pretty similar, but I layered it with a pretty regular supersaw thing. I'm also using more voices than I did when I was doing supersaw. It's also distorted harder, a little bassier, and a whole lot more reverb. This bass is just a really standard, grungy kind of bass that's pretty much designed to go with the chords, which is a concept that was originally inspired to me by Overwork. Now here's another fun element. I don't even know why I did this. I don't know what mood I was in where I decided that I wanted to do essentially tribal-esque electro plucks, but I did. And this is what I ended up doing. Now, writing this, though, I made a pretty regular, like, here's a pretty regular, like, it's just that. But the actual arrangement of it, I did by cutting up the pattern and moving it around. And layered with the drums. It's syncopated. It's just syncopation. It's all there is to that. And then here's one of my voices.
Let your body rock.
A lot of what happened to make the voice sound like this was just a lot of time stretching and with using different algorithms of pitching, and I might have used Harmor to alter some performance.
Let your body rock.
That's why I made a blur, which I'll show about when I use that later. Lots of different reverbs and all kinds of stuff. I have a separate sub on this. I didn't know that. I mean, obviously I knew that, but I forgot that I did a separate sub. I don't really do separate subs very often. This is an ARP. This controls the filter of the ARP. This controls how fast the ARP is ARPing. Lower means more speed. It means shorter time, thus more speed. That's what that means. Yeah. So the full vocal line.
Let your body rock. Let your body move. Let your body jump. Let your body rock.
It repeats.
Let your body move to the killer groove. Let your body rock.
You see I had to do a lot of chopping up and changing and whatever. I wonder what the sounds are without effects.
Let your body rock. Let your body move. Let your body jump. Let your body rock.
Lots of change there. The chords pretty much stick to the... pretty standard stuff. Lots of reverb, but it gets sidechained pretty heavily, so it's not actually very permeable. Much like the Virtual Riot remix, when I was adding in bass stabs. I was picking from my drag sample library and just grabbing stuff. In fact, there's probably some in here that I use that are also in the Virtual Riot track. That was in some kind of dubstep track from scratch. What is that? I don't know when that was. Some bass experiment. I actually might have made that for this track, but I think it cleared up everything. Yeah, I did. So I don't know. We'll cover more of that in the sound design portion. Just kind of pepper them in there to sort of get them to fit better, and then interspersed with the tribal quote unquote. We'll talk about what's going on with that in the sound design portion as well. The basses that are present in the drop here. Oh, this guy's actually kind of fun. This guy I have linked up to this wave candy because I was using the wave candy to actually determine how to make it. Which one are you? And my keyboard's not on. Good job, Seamless. Yeah. If you've seen previous How to Basses, you actually might recognize that shape from Wave Shaper Weirdness. And that's what that bass is. Wave Shaper Weirdness. How's that going on? Watch that be what gets me caught on Continent ID. Pretty much every time we see it down here, that's more or less what that is. Lots of neat things, and there's a couple. Yeah, and then down here is where the female vocal starts to actually come in. I think this is my voice here.
Let your body rock.
Yeah, still that. And then
let your body rock.
This is just a lead in, and I'm pretty sure I have a volume for that. Yeah.
Let your.
This is To the Killer Groove. She did a lot of ad libs. Like this is the entire ad lib section for that kind of thing, basically versus the actual vocal line.
Way you move, it's the way you move, it's the way you move to the killer groove. It's the way you move, it's the way you move, it's the way you move to the killer groove. It's the way you move, it's the way you move, it's the way you move to the killer groove. It's the way you.
I watch that gets me caught on Content ID. In reality, what they essentially did, like, because it was a very last minute session where Mick got this vocalist, I'm forgetting her name, Allie, to record this. So they essentially just did as much as they felt that they could, like humongous harmonies, a whole bunch of ad libs, so like a lot of stuff that I might not necessarily want. And I don't think I used everything, but I used a lot of it. This is the ARP down here. The chords are... That is directly from the original track. In fact, the B drop here is pretty one-to-one with the corresponding section in the original song. The first half of the drop is still, it's pretty similar because of how the male vocal is distributed, but everything else is more or less just regular sort of drop territory. But this is like what the original song sounded like. A couple newer sounds that I threw in here. Like, this is actually reversed. a lot of fun there. This is the same one. I don't know if I cut it. It's actually, is it the same? No, it's not. I think I pitched it down to match the tone. And this should be pretty familiar. I think that's Seamless Nam Nam. Nope, that's Phase Verb 13. Phase verbs, blast from the past, a type of Harmer phaser usage that I came up with when I made Resolve back in the day, if you remember that track. That's not even the right key, but you can't tell because it's so heavily sidechained and everything else is supporting it, like the sub beneath it. Now this part's a lot of fun, the way that the vocal was layered with this guy here.
Kill a groove.
I layer it in with this, which is like a reversed blur from me saying groove.
Kill a groove.
And it makes it sound really big and huge when that comes up. Which you'll have to listen to the original if you're not totally sure about that. Same sample, same sample. Same sample. Lots of fills and that kind of thing, like arrangement-wise. This is really just very regular stuff for like the kind of electro that I do. What does this sample sound like? Still that sample. And then here's Kill a Groove again.
Kill a groove.
Like I said, I do that a lot. And then this part is a big build-up. And then like I add in this new sound during the actual rise. And I did that because I was going to try and actually like make a new like arrangement for the second drop. I was gonna try and do something like wholly new, because I don't know. I had kind of like the game music sort of idea in my head where like things change a lot, and it's because it's honestly it's a suite. It's designed. It shows you all the elements that are usually repeating or dynamic in in a game, which Killer Instinct has a lot of dynamic music. But and that's sort of when you're listening to a an OST, you encounter a lot of that. So I decided I was gonna try and do that, but then like I actually got to the end of the rise here, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna have time. I'm just gonna have time to drop. And this is more or less the same drop as the beginning, only it's halftime. And I did a couple of differences like there in the chords here. I lead up some certain notes and certain other ones, that kind of thing. It gives a nice little unbalanced feel. And it's almost it gives it kind of like a Just Easy feel actually. Sometimes. And I do the big room thing. I almost said big house. Yeah. And like it's just lots of effects, lots of just shoving bass samples all over the place. Is this the one that I say?
Let your body rock.
I love that one. That one's a lot of fun. I will risk content ID to play that up right now because I just like how that worked. But just the isolation for the moment and the way that it's like there's a lot of the bass samples that actually kind of line up with my inflection that I got out of the vocal samples, and it ended up working out a lot. It worked out good. And that is not to say that I planned on that, because I didn't. Like, I didn't plan on a lot. And part of the reason why I'm not being as intricate about what sounds and the arrangement and whatever is because a lot of this was not planned. And the rest of it's just really standard. You know, we have the ARP in the bottom here. We've got a separate sub layering out underneath everything. We've got the supporting mid-range bass underneath the sometime chords. And we've got, what are you? Oh, you're just hats. And more hats and the drums. Lots of side chaining. It's halftime. And a whole lot of random bass samples that I pulled from my drag samples folder from bass sound design experiments that I didn't finish. Ooh, there was one very interesting thing that happened to this part though, in terms of basses. That's this guy. I actually did a how to base on this. This was how to base 80, I think. What this was what I was talking about earlier about discovering that I could do FM with harmony. You actually kind of see this modulating the frequency right there. That's what I meant by that. And this is where I discovered it, and that's where I put that in there. And I don't think I've used it since as a technique, that is. And then we go back to another version of the chorus. I could actually honestly, for real, call this a chorus. They have verse and chorus, which is something that's not very common in sort of this style of music that I do. And then there's an outro that ends. Like it's just the same thing as the beginning, honestly. And I bring that sample back from the intro.
It's the way you move.
Yeah. 20-year-old vocals. How crazy is that? This is a 20-year-old song that I'm remixing. The 90s, man. I am pretty sure I covered everything. There's like cymbals, hits, and stuff. They're all from Leviathan. This is from the Groove sample. This is just a crash from the stock FL stock samples. Originally from Groove Machine, but now they're stock, so it's not really a big deal. I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything important. The next making of video and stream will be covering the sound design parts of all these individual things. I did cover kind of a lot about how I did these things, but these are pretty simple. And the more complicated stuff happens in here. So that'll be a lot of fun when that happens. For those of you watching on YouTube, if you have any questions about any of this, let me know. And as usual, have a nice day.